A man once bet everything he had on one final game. His money, his home, even his future. Everyone in the room believed he was crazy. The cards were about to be revealed, and in just a few seconds his entire life would either be destroyed or changed forever. But what no one in that smoky gambling hall knew was that the biggest gamble he was taking was not with money. It was with his own soul. Stay with this story until the end, because the final decision this man makes will reveal a truth about life that most people realize far too late. Late one cold evening, in a crowded town filled with flickering lanterns and restless voices, there lived a man named Daniel. To most people, Daniel was known as the gambler, not because he was lucky, but because he never stopped betting on chances, no matter how dangerous they were. Years ago, Daniel had been an ordinary young man with simple dreams. He worked in his father's small repair shop, fixing broken tools and worn-out machines. His father used to say, "Life rewards patience, not shortcuts." But Daniel had always been fascinated by something different, the thrill of risk. The first time he ever entered a gambling house, he was only 20 years old. At first, it was just curiosity. The room was alive with energy, the sound of coins clinking, cards sliding across tables, and people cheering or groaning in disappointment. For Daniel, it felt like stepping into a world where anything could happen in a single moment. That night, he placed his first small bet. And it was not a large amount, but the feeling it gave him was powerful. In that instant, he felt smarter than everyone else, luckier than everyone else, as if fate itself had chosen him. That small victory planted a dangerous seed in his heart. Days turned into weeks, and Daniel began visiting the gambling hall more often. At first, he only played with spare money, convincing himself that it was harmless entertainment. But gambling has a strange way of whispering lies to people. Everyone told him he was destined for greatness. Every loss told him the next game would fix everything. His father noticed the change quickly. One evening, while Daniel counted coins at the dinner table, his father looked at him with quiet worry and said, "A man who chases luck eventually runs away from himself." Daniel laughed it off. He believed he was different. He believed he could control it. But slowly, the bets grew larger. The nights grew longer, and the losses grew heavier. The repair shop began to suffer because Daniel stopped showing up regularly. Tools remained unfixed, customers stopped coming, and the small business that had supported their family for years began to crumble. His father tried to guide him back, but Daniel had already fallen too deep into the illusion of winning everything back with just one lucky night. Then came the day Daniel lost the shop entirely. It happened during a tense game of cards where pride mattered more than money. Desperate to recover his recent losses, Daniel placed the shop deed on the table. The room went silent as the other players stared at him in disbelief. Even the dealer hesitated before continuing the game. The cards were dealt. Within minutes, Daniel watched the winning hand slide across the table. But it was not his. The shop was gone. When Daniel returned home that night, his father said nothing. The disappointment in his eyes was heavier than any punishment. A few months later, the old man passed away, leaving Daniel alone with regret that felt impossible to escape. Yet instead of stopping, Daniel sank deeper into gambling. He moved from town to town, chasing the next opportunity, telling himself that one big win would fix everything he had lost. Years passed. Daniel aged faster than time itself. The confident young man had become a tired stranger with restless eyes and empty pockets. Still, the dream of a miracle win refused to die. Then one night, in a dusty town filled with travelers and merchants, Daniel walked into the largest gambling hall he had ever seen. Inside were wealthy traders, skilled card players, and people who had spent their entire lives mastering the art of risk. Daniel sat quietly at a table that first. He played cautiously, observing the players around him. Surprisingly, luck seemed to favor him again. One small win turned into another, then another. The pile of coins in front of him slowly grew. For the first time in years, Daniel felt that familiar excitement returning. Maybe this was the night. Maybe fate had finally decided to repay him. Hours passed as the games grew more intense. Eventually, the table reached its final round, a high-stakes game where only the bravest players remained. The bets were enormous. People whispered nervously as fortunes changed hands with each round. Daniel realized something shocking. He was winning. The money in front of him was more than he had ever held before. Enough to buy a house. Enough to start a new life. Enough to finally escape the years of poverty and regret. But then the most dangerous thought entered his mind. If he continued, he could win even more. The dealer looked at him and asked calmly, "Do you want to stop here or keep playing?" The room waited for his answer. Daniel stared at the cards in his hands. His heart pounded like a drum inside his chest. He thought about his father's words, the repair shop, the years he had wasted chasing luck. For the first time in his life, he understood something important. The real gamble was never the cards that it was the choices he kept making. Daniel slowly pushed his chair back and stood up. "I'm done," he said quietly. The room exploded with confusion. Some players laughed at him, believing he had lost his courage at the final moment. Others shook their heads in disbelief. But Daniel didn't care. He gathered the money he had already won and walked toward the door. For the first time in years, he felt something he had not felt in a very long time. Peace. Outside, the night air was cold and silent. The town streets were empty except for the distant glow of lanterns. Daniel looked up at the sky and whispered, "I finally understand. The greatest victory in life is not winning every game that it is knowing when to stop playing." Months later, Daniel used the money to open a small workshop in another town. He repaired tools, just like he once did with his father. The work was slow and simple, but it brought him something gambling never could: purpose. And sometimes, when travelers passed through the town and recognized him as the famous gambler, they would ask him the same question: "Why did you walk away when you were about to win everything?" Daniel would smile gently and reply, "Because I finally realized I had already won the most important bet, the one against myself." And that is the lesson many people learn too late. Life is full of risks, chances, and temptations that promise quick success. But the strongest people are not those who gamble the most. They are the ones wise enough to stop before they lose what truly matters.